we went out and bought 5 investment properties, single family homes, brand new builds. And these were, $145,000 homes that were renting for $1,500, $1,600 a month. So we're like, oh, this is good. This is easy. I love this. And that's what led us on this path. And then fast forward a little bit more, we had friends and family saying, how are you doing this? How are you living in San Francisco and owning rental properties out in Texas? So we just decided to form a small group to help our friends and family. And then Kathy had started a small radio show in the San Francisco area. So listeners of that show were saying, how did you do this? And we formed this group that we called Real Wealth. And today, 19 years later, Real Wealth now has over 66,000 members that we've helped create financial independence through investing in real estate.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Man, do I have a few amazing segments for you lined up now. This guy, our guest today, he and his wife are just an amazing team. They've done some amazing things in real estate. Their story is incredible. He's going to share a little piece of that with you right off the bat today. And I know it's going to encourage you. I know that I hope whether you are a passive or active investor that you're going to listen closely to our guest today. His name is Rich Fettke. He's the author of The Wise Investor, a modern parable about creating financial freedom and living your best life. He's a licensed real estate broker, active investor, co-founder of Real Wealth, a real estate investment group that helps its 60,000 plus members improve their financial intelligence, secure passive income, and obtain financial freedom. A pioneer in the field of business and personal coaching, he's a former vice president of the International Coach Federation and holds one of the ICF's first master certified coach credentials. Rich's work has been featured on TV, radio, and print, including USA Today, Entrepreneur Magazine, and the Wall Street Journal. I've enjoyed getting to know Rich and Kathy over the last number of years. I've had Rich and Kathy on the show a few different times, and every time they bring so much value. I'm honored to have him on for a number of segments today. We're going to jump into their story to some degree, his background, and we're going to jump into his book as well, The Wise Investor, and talk about some specific things he has in the book that I know you're going to learn from and take things home today. Enjoy the show with Rich. You're going to be inspired and you're going to learn a lot. Rich, welcome to the show. Honored to have you on. I know you've been on the show. It's been a while. You and your amazing bride, you all are just quite the entrepreneurial duo. It's incredible to get to know you all a little better, even speak at some of the same conferences, and I've seen you recently. So honored to get to spend this time with you, Rich. Thank you. Just right off the bat, I just want to thank you for your time.
Thank you, Whitney. Good to be here. It was great seeing you a few months ago. And yeah, my bride is amazing. I agree. I'm grateful.
You all are just have an amazing brand and business, and looking forward to diving in. Let's give the listeners, though, a little bit more about who Rich is, and, just share a little bit about your all's focus in the real estate industry as well. And let's dive into this book that you've written as well.
Absolutely. Sure. Well, who am I? Going way back, it was, I was diagnosed hyperkinetic disorder when I was 8 years old. So I was put in, today they call that ADHD, but I'm older. So they didn't have that term back then. So I was put on Ritalin. I was put in the class for the learning disabled and made fun of in school. And so I've got this inner gremlin that I still am working to shake that tells me that I'm never going to be successful. I'll never amount to anything. But what turned things around for me was I got into weight training in my senior year of high school. I didn't even graduate with my high school class. It was like, school was not a good place for me. But weight training really taught me about building discipline, staying focused, coming up with a goal, envisioning success. And I started to apply those lessons to my educational pursuits and went on to get a degree in business and opened a health club when I was 23 years old. And that's when I really just got into business. I love business. I love leading a team. I love working with a group of awesome people to create a purpose and a mission and to really go after it. So fast forward, I moved to California. I grew up in Boston, moved to California in 95. That's when I met Kathy, my wife, and was doing really well. I got into business and personal coaching back in 95 when it was new. It was a new industry and just loved it and kind of rocketed up in that industry because it was so new. I was elected president of a coaching organization and ended up having a front page article in the San Francisco Chronicle on myself and my clients. And so life was just like on fire. Everything was great. And then I signed a book deal with Simon and Schuster, but then I was diagnosed with melanoma, which is the most advanced form of skin cancer. And they thought it had spread to my liver. And I met with an oncologist. This is after several months of testing. And the oncologist said that I had 6 months to live. I was 37 years old. My wife, Kathy, we had 2 daughters, 10 years old and 3 years old. And it was a real shock to our whole family. And so Kathy was a stay-at-home mom at the time. And she's the one who said, I have to find a way to make ends meet if Rich dies. So she went out and sought mentors and started to talk to successful people and found that most of those successful people had created their success and their wealth through real estate and real estate investing. So she got excited about that. She's like, this is what I can do. Thankfully, the doctor's diagnosis was wrong. The melanoma had not spread to my liver. It was just hemangiomas, which a lot of us have in our organs, just clusters of blood vessels. But it was enough on the scans to have them think that it was spread and metastasized. So that was the thankful thing, that I had a new lease on life and made it through after a few surgeries to remove the melanoma, cancer-free. Now it's been 20 years since then. But that is what got us into investing. And that's what was the spark. Kathy and I did a cash out refi on the home that we owned in San Francisco. And we went to north of Dallas, Texas, to a little town called Rockwall. And we went out and bought 5 investment properties, single family homes, brand new builds. And these were, $145,000 homes that we're renting for $1,500, $1,600 a month. So we're like, oh, this is good. This is easy. I love this. And that's what led us on this path. And then fast forward a little bit more, we had friends and family saying, how are you doing this? How are you living in San Francisco and owning rental properties out in Texas? So we just decided to form a small group to help our friends and family. And then Kathy had started a small radio show in the San Francisco area. So listeners of that show were saying, how did you do this? And we formed this group that we called Real Wealth. And today, 19 years later, Real Wealth now has over 66,000 members that we've helped create financial independence through investing in real estate. That's it in a nutshell, is the best I can.
Yeah, no, I love hearing your whole story. It's just incredible. So many parts of that. I just appreciate your transparency, right? Even from the diagnosis at 8, I just think there's so many people that can relate to that as well, right? In the struggle of that through school. And I don't know, just getting labeled, right? I think it's a crime almost. I mean, just, I do, it's like, man, and you're such an example of it wasn't true, right? I mean, you were able to come through that, able to do amazing things. I love the perseverance, right? That you just show through that, even opening your own health club at 23. I mean, man, it's incredible. So, and I want to go there for just a moment. What about, would you say the pushback that you received at that time? Was it, were family members or friends maybe saying, hey, Rich, maybe you should think about opening this club or this business. Maybe you shouldn't do this by yourself, or maybe you know what I mean? Like, I just wonder how much, that pushback there was and how you overcame that.
Yeah, definitely pushback. I was intent on it. I was a competitive bodybuilder for about 10 years. So I had gone to a lot of different health clubs and gyms. And I would look at these places saying, I could do it better. And it was my training partner and we were on a trip to Florida. And after several gyms like that, we're like, we can do it better. So we got home and I was all fired up. And then, then I met the resistance. I realized that I needed to get a loan and have someone co-sign with the bank that owned the property, where it was started with an 8,000 square foot facility. So it was convincing my parents, actually. And my mom's always been a huge believer in me. She sees ADD as an extra ability. There's different benefits that come from having ADD. You get to see more and be more attentive to more things. So she's the one that believed in me. I did have to convince her, because her concern was that I only had an associate's degree at the time. And she said, I'm just afraid that if you open this gym, that you'll never go on and get your 4-year degree, which is really important to her. So I'm just like, Mom, I promise, if you give me this loan, if you co-sign on this loan, even if it doesn't work out, I'll work 2 full-time jobs to pay the loan back. It's going to work. I know it's going to happen. And somehow I sold my parents on it, and they co-signed with me on the loan, and my partner came in, and it was a life-changing experience running a business. It was just me and my partners in the beginning. And then over time, we grew that 8,000 square foot facility to 23,000 square feet. We had 24 employees by the time I sold it when I was 30. And it was the life changer. I'm always going back to my mom, thanking her for that. Had she not done that, there's no way I would be where I am today, and I wouldn't have helped the people that I've helped today and all that. So yeah, there was definitely some resistance. There was definitely the naysayers saying, oh man, I heard it's really hard to run a gym, run a health club. And it was hard. And those first couple of years were a grind, but we came through and made it happen.
Yeah, I think that could speak to, people who are maybe in those same shoes as you are, but also the parents of those individuals as well. I love that. And how has maybe that changed how you have thought about even parenting, as far as, like your mother signed with you and kind of helped push you or in this direction, right? Or believed in you. What does that look like now, as a parent?
Yeah, now we have adult kids. One daughter's 30. We have a grandson now who's 2.5, which is pretty awesome. Our other younger daughter's 23 now. Our parenting style has been much about using questions. Kathy and I both went through coach training back in 1995 and 1996. And the power of the coaching that we learned is very Socratic, very much realizing that most people have most of their answers inside, or they're resourceful and they can find those answers somewhere. And so as parents, we always would just ask our daughters questions. We wouldn't tell them what to do or what they had to do or how they had to do it. It was very that Socratic, curious, tell me more. What do you want? What's next? How are you going to go about that? And I think that's empowering for anyone, whether you're a parent, whether you're a coach, whether you're a business leader, all of those things is being curious, asking the question, realizing that people are creative, that people are resourceful, that people can find out their answers where they need to, whether that be through books or podcasts or finding a mentor. So I just see as my job as a parent is to empower my kids to believe in themselves, to draw out the answers for them, and to show them how to be resourceful instead of micromanaging and telling them how to do things. And that's the way we treat all of our employees at Real Wealth too.
Love that.
A lot of autonomy.
Yeah, I have so much to learn from you.
No, always learning, man. Me too.
That's awesome. Now, I just appreciate you sharing that. I mean, just like your mother believed in you, right? And man, they took that leap of faith in you and supported you. I love that. But then even to the diagnosis, at 37, well, what an eye opener, right? And how that changed everything for you all. And it's almost a blessing now that happened, right? What a blessing that it was not correct. I just cannot imagine. But wow, what rejoicing, happened when you figured out that it wasn't true.
Oh, it was a rejoice for sure.
So, so many things have happened. I mean, you all built this, the Real Wealth brand. And I think even last time you were on the show, now that I'm thinking about it, maybe we talked about EOS a little bit and how you all have implemented that and how you're caring for employees. And we worked through that a little bit. And,
right.
And so I love your all's desire to just to care for your employees, the culture, the focus on culture and how well you all have done that. But I want to dive in though as well to, this thing you call Real Wealth, but you wrote a book recently called the Wise Investor Book, right? And I want to dive into what that is and what is that about? And let's dive into why you wrote the book and give us some details.
Sure. Yeah. So the Wise Investor is a little bit different than most financial books and real estate books. It's a parable. It's a modern parable. So it's a story and it's about creating financial freedom and living your best life. That's actually the subtitle. Man, what can I say about it? It's a parable. It's kind of like if you took Rich Dad, Poor Dad and The Alchemist and The Richest Man in Babylon and kind of blended it into a book. It's that style of book. And the reason I wrote a story is because for two reasons. Number one, I wanted the reader to finish it. And my first book was a nonfiction book, the one that I signed with Simon & Schuster called Extreme Success. It was a nonfiction personal development coaching book and I'm really proud of it. And I also know, and I read some statistics that 86% of people don't finish nonfiction books. And so I didn't want to write another book that people weren't going to finish. So I wanted to write a compelling story that was a page turner that could share the lessons and emotionalize the information. That's what a story does. I think a story can take information like about investing, about financial freedom, about business, about being a better parent, about being a better spouse, about being more present. These are all the lessons that I wove into the Wise Investor. And it emotionalizes this information and the lessons so it sticks because the reader can see themselves in the protagonist. They can see themselves in maybe the protagonist's wife or even the mentor or even, all these different characters. It's like, oh, I kind of experienced that same type of lesson, or I need to hear this lesson. And so that's why I wrote a parable. And that's why it was important to me.
Yeah, I love that. I think about my boys, even my daughter now, she's 3. It's like when my wife or I read a good story, I mean, you can see it in their faces, right? I mean, they are just on the edge of their seats and it's hard for them to sit still for school, right? For 15 minutes. But man, when you're reading the story, my wife can read a story for an hour and their eyes are just glued on her, just thinking about that. Yeah.
That's the way we operate as human beings, for thousands of years, think about Jesus and all the stories he shared and even the Buddha, it's like, it doesn't matter. You look way back in the Stoics, it's usually stories. And then when I went about this I hired someone he's called a Story Grid certified editor. So there's this thing called Story Grid, which is this guy, Sean Coyne, who has analyzed what makes an amazing story. Basically, Joseph Campbell's work and the hero's journey and all these blockbuster movies that follow the same type of hero's journey. So I hired someone to work with me on this story. We would meet on Zoom and talk out the story and the characters. I would share the lessons that I've learned and that I've learned from the members of Real Wealth over the years around investing, about creating financial freedom, all these things, all the stories and lessons from my coaching clients over the years. And then we wove this into that story. So it was just I kind of did the who, not how. It's like, okay, not how can I get this book written, but who do I need to help me get this book written and do it in a compelling way?
For sure. Are the characters real people, or how do you frame that?
They are fictional people based on real people. And it's a fictional story, but it's based on real life events. Absolutely. So when on our podcast, The Real Wealth Show, man, Kathy's been doing that since podcasting came out in 2005. It's kind of crazy, but we interview people on that as you do. And we just look at their journey, like where were they? What did they do? And where are they now? And these stories are so compelling and so inspiring that I absolutely wove some of those stories into the main characters of The Wise Investor because they need to be shared. It's really powerful. So basically, the main character's name is Ryan Brooks. It tells a story of his life over 5 years. And in the beginning, he starts off, he's a W-2 employee. He's making a good 6-figure income. He's maxing out his 401k, but his spending habits are crap. He's not aware of where his money's going. He's got lifestyle creep and he has no time. He's trying to climb the corporate ladder and he has no time for his wife, for his kids, or even to live. So it kind of shows that story of him meeting a new friend, meeting a new mentor who guides him and shows him a new way to creating financial freedom. And this guy, Ryan, becomes wealthy in more ways than he ever thought possible.
You mentioned a lifestyle creep. What is that?
Lifestyle creep is like when you start to make a little more money, you get a pay raise, and all of a sudden you get a nicer car. And then you get another pay raise, and you get a bigger house, and then you get a boat, and then you start, going out to eat more, and your lifestyle starts to go up with your income, and you never have any money left over magically, right? It's like, why don't we have money to invest? And so the big lessons around most people that I've met, and most people we've talked to in our network, and even some of us investors, when I talk to them at conferences, don't have a personal financial statement. They don't know what their net worth is. They don't know what their monthly cash flow is. They don't even know what their real expenses are in those different categories. So that's one of the first lessons that the protagonist learns from the mentor is just, I want you to write down all of your expenses. I want to see over the period of a month, where's your money going? And then he gives them the challenge of reducing those expenses by 20%. And he thinks it's impossible. He's like, there's no way I could reduce my expenses by 20%, but he figures a way. And that's what so many of us have to do. And including myself, I've been through this. I went through it where not being aware, making more money, but not really aware of where that money's going and putting that money to work.
Have you, and this is kind of a side question to the story, but I want to ask you right now anyway, have you found a great way to track personal expenses, or how do you do that to manage that? I know listeners, many of us have tried to do that well. Any tips around that?
Yes, I think the best thing I ever did was hiring a bookkeeper for our personal finances. So I was, trying to do it myself. It's like, well, I should be able to manage this myself. I should be able to track all the expenses. I should be able to put in a couple hours a week on our books, but I would avoid it. I would put it off. There was other more important things to focus on, growing the business, taking care of the kids. And so one day I finally just said, you know what? Thanks to my coach, I have a coach I speak to every other week. He's the one who challenged me. He's like, right, Rich, why are you doing your own books? And so I bit the bullet. I hired a bookkeeper, and that's been a game changer. And now he creates these reports. He creates a monthly net worth statement, monthly personal financial statement, our balance sheet, our cash flow statement, our budget. And so now all Kathy and I have to do is sit down, print these reports out, go over them and look at what's working, what's not working, what adjustments we need to make, where we're going to deploy some capital into an investment. Yeah. So getting a bookkeeper that's the biggie.
Yeah, I appreciate your focus on that. And we won't spend a ton of time there. I feel like we probably should do a whole show on that. I feel like that would help so many listeners, right? Just to get a handle on your own personal expenses, I think is crucial, just as you are mentioning here. But just to clarify for the listeners as well, now this is a bookkeeper that's for your personal finances. It's not like for the business, just business, like your entities, your operating business, those things. But it's like, how much am I spending on eating out this month? Is that accurate?
100%. Yeah. So we have we have a CFO for our company, and we also have a director of finance. So our director of finance at Real Wealth, she runs the whole thing financially, keeping track of things and our whole QuickBooks account and everything. And we have an outsourced CFO who is experienced. He only basically probably puts in maybe 5 hours a week for our company, but he's an experienced CFO who's worked with multiple companies. So he can really help guide us as a business on what's working, where we need to make adjustments, all that stuff, percentages and ratios. But yeah, this guy, Sam, who's our personal bookkeeper, I hired him through a company called Belay, and Belay provides executive assistants, which this is where also I found my executive assistant, and Belay also has bookkeepers, trained bookkeepers with experience. So I hired Sam through Belay, and I think probably been working with him for 5 or 6 years now. And so he knows our finances better than I do. It's really awesome.
Love that. I appreciate that insight there too. I've talked to Belay numerous times about virtual assistants, and I know they're like the cream of the crop, seem to be anyway, as in virtual assistants. Well, I appreciate that side note there. I want to jump back into the book, and you talk about this mentor a little bit. Is the mentor's focus mostly on real estate? And if so, why?
Yeah, that's his main focus, and in it,
I would hope
says,
so.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Well, also, that's what I've seen create the greatest wealth, for us as a family and for the members of Real Wealth and the people that I associate with. And, I have friends who are financial advisors. I have friends who invest in the stock market, and they do well, the ones who do it right. But the mentor basically just says, real estate is his favorite method of acquiring wealth and creating cash flow. And he goes over what so many of us know, like the 5 ways to benefits and profit from real estate investing, from appreciation to all the tax benefits of it, the hedge against inflation, all this stuff that we know. And he explains it to Ryan, the protagonist. And so it's kind of a new thing to Ryan. And as he's learning these lessons, he's like, oh man, I didn't even realize all these benefits of investing. So the mentor, he invests in stocks, he invests in crypto, he has gold, all that stuff. But real estate is primary wealth building vehicle, really.
Love that. I feel like it'd be one of those kind of like Rich Dad Poor Dad, or some of those that are like, it's the eye-opening part that has to happen, or the mind expansion that, hey, this is a real thing. This is possible for me, right? And I feel like that's just crucial before you ever dive into the actual dynamics of how you take down a single family home or a multifamily or all those things, right? It's like understanding that I can do it.
Yeah. And the mentor, even says, he goes, I started in single family, and that's how I got, started off and learned it. And then he said, now I invest in multifamily, I invest in mobile home parks, I invest in self-storage, so he's kind of this blend of so many people I've met at these conferences, like you, or like Brendan Turner, or like Tarl Yarber, or like Kenny McElroy, it's like he's this blend of these experienced investors, and he has wisdom, a lot more wisdom than I do. I know that.
Rich, I'm grateful for your time today. I want the listeners to know too, we're going to do a series with Rich. So we're going to do what is real wealth and that right financial mindset we're going to jump into shortly. So Rich, thank you so much for your time today, and even sharing, really just being transparent about your story and some of the hardships that have helped shape you and Kathy, your business, and that's just become so amazing. And so I know that's helping so many people because you all are willing to be so open about it, and the struggles of making it happen, right? And how you all have done that. And even this book, looking forward to diving into that a little more. Tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you and learn more about you.
Sure. Our company is really simple. It's just realwealth.com. And social media, I think I'm the only Rich Fettke in the world. So just Rich Fettke, which is Fettke. And then the Wise Investors, available now. It's on Amazon, all major booksellers, as a Kindle or ebook, and also on Audible as an audiobook. And it'll be coming out soon as a hardcover once the supply chain issues are dealt with here. But it's coming out really soon as a hardcover.
Thank you for being with us again today. I hope you have liked and subscribed to the show. Please tell your friends about the Real Estate Syndication Show. And I hope that you are learning and growing. Don't forget to go to lifebridgecapital.com, where you can start investing today.